So I just wanted to quickly walk through the new submission form to try and make the process as easy as possible. Obviously, you're going to find it very straightforward, so it should not be that difficult, but just to walk through the initial steps and kind of guide you on how you would submit the form, you want to include your name. That would be the name of the person submitting on the very first step. You can hit OK. As some guidance overall on this form, by swiping up, it'll let you return to the previous question. Also, while your cursor is in the blank, you can hit enter or return, and that'll move on to the next question. You can also, once you've entered in a response, swipe down, and that will take you to the next question. You also want to make sure that you enter an email so that you can be reached with any follow-up questions, also so that we know who it is submitting this particular form. For the question, what's the client's name? Generally speaking, this is not going to be somebody who is just recouping, but we just want to know who the client's name is, generally speaking. So for those outside of the company, it may be the same party who's being invoiced. For those who are inside the company, we may invoice them, we may recoup. That's not necessarily the important question here, but the client's name is just who is the client's name for this particular campaign. So we'll use my fake artist, who I use for testing, Rizzy Rob, and we'll move on to the next question. Campaign ID, this is going to be a new question that you probably have not seen before. We are instituting a new campaign ID system. It's going to be in 5 parts. It'll have an initial first 5-digit section, and then a second 3-digit section, and then a third 3-digit section. We can go into this in more explanation in the future as you start to get these IDs and track them, but the first 5 digits are going to track an overall campaign. What that means is that you may have a TrueView campaign, a YouTube integration, you may have IG Reels, all of these things running for the same client at the same time. All of those will share the same 5-digit number, and it just counts down from 1. I think we're on 13 at this point. The second set of digits is going to identify the platform that this particular campaign item is going to run on. So IG Reels, IG Promo, Facebook, we consider this one platform. YouTube is a separate platform, so obviously TrueView and other YouTube ads may run on that platform, and that would share the same ID number. The third set, it identifies the particular service. So here, IG Reels will have a different number than IG Promo, which will have a different number than Facebook. So all of these things will have a separate number. After we've been using these for a while, you'll be able to identify not only just the campaign, but the platform and the service, but just by looking at this campaign ID number. But right now we're starting a new campaign, so we don't have one. So I can just move on to the next question. Invoice or recoup. I'll mark this one as a recoup just for our purposes here. And I can put here the client to be recouped against. This may be the same as the client above, it may not. And so I can enter here just to show you why we moved from the old form to the current form. If instead of hitting recoup, I had put invoice, it will move into an entirely different question set, asking me questions about invoicing. So entity be invoiced, maybe the client, maybe somebody else. I'll skip this question and we just go into contact, email, the billing street address. All of these things are going to be involved in an invoice question, which wouldn't be involved in a recoup. So we can actually skip those by going to recoup, entering the artist, and then move down to the start date of the campaign. I will use the 15th of the month as the start date. It's going to be looking for, obviously, a valid date when you enter that in. We'll use the end of the month as the end date for that campaign. And then it's going to ask you a question about being paid. I know some of you will enter this after already having moving forward with the vendor, and so you've already paid it, whether that's being paid out of a separate account or being paid by accounts payable. You can mark it as yes, it's been paid, if it's been paid. If it hasn't been actually paid, but it's already been forwarded to accounting, you can mark it as such. And if not, you can say no, it hasn't been submitted at all. And that'll move you down to probably the most important screen, which just lets you choose the type of campaign. Depending on what type of campaign you choose here, this will obviously send you down a different logic path with different questions for each of the different types of services. Again, most of you who are checking this out will have run a TrueView campaign before, and so you will recognize the question set that comes from the YouTube or the TrueView campaign. These are going to be the same questions you've answered on the Google form, just in a different place, in a slightly different format, entering the URL, the title of the video, the genre of the video, budget for the campaign, with a bunch of options to choose from. All of this should be very familiar to you if you have submitted to that TrueView campaign form before. If I select something else, like DSP UGC playlisting, which is obviously Spotify, it will take me to a different set of questions with a different budget option list, with a different question about the artist Spotify link, and then down to what are shared questions for all of these. Anyone to be CC'd internally so that you can add people on who need to be tracking this along with you, and then any notes that you want to include. This is the final screen 13. It may be more or less depending on which of the paths you follow down, but here's going to be your final opportunity to include anything in, and when you hit submit, it will actually submit the form to a first sheet, which assigns the campaign ID. It checks to see if a campaign already exists. If it does, then it assures that we are going to assign the same campaign ID so that it's shared by any aspects of the same campaign. And then move it on to our master sheet where everyone's notified and we can move forward with the campaign. But as I said, this is for the DSP linking. It's different than the TrueView YouTube ads, which you saw a bit of. It's going to be different than SoundCloud Plays, which has a different budget selection screen, which has different follow-up questions. All of those things are going to be different, but depending on which service you choose here. So obviously you want to be careful and make sure that you choose the correct one. But for any screen, you can always scroll backwards or scroll up, and it will take you to the previous screen, so you can re-enter a different answer and then move back forward to the next question. So if you have any issues with the form, please do reach out. Happy to address or fix any of them or answer any questions about them. And the members of the marketing team will get a notification email or a message, depending on their preference, when you make a submission. You should be able to follow up with them, the typical people you've reached out to before, or they'll reach out to you with any follow-up questions that they may have for you.